This is Richard Wolff from Democracy at Work, responding to another Ask Prof. Wolff question from our Patreon community. This one comes from Paul Cohen, and it is the kind of question I often get. It has to do, I suspect, with the way economics has been taught for a long time, particularly in American universities, but elsewhere as well. And by that I mean capitalism is usually introduced and analyzed on the basis of a kind of assumption. A good teacher will tell you that this is an assumption. A not so careful teacher won't. Here's the assumption that markets, the places where we buy and sell pretty much everything in a capitalist system, are typically, or at least should be, competitive. And here's what that means that there are many buyers on one side and many sellers on the other side of everything, whether we're talking about hamburgers or haircuts or computer programs, it doesn't matter. A competitive market has lots of buyers on the one side and lots of sellers on the other. And the reason for that assumption is that you want there to be competition. That is a struggle among the many buyers to get the best deal they can, and a struggle among the sellers to get the best profit or gain or sales that they can manage. And you want that because you want the outcome, the price in the market, the deal cut between the buyers and the sellers, to be something imposed on each one individually, but produced by them all collectively. You don't want any one buyer to have the power to change the price. That tends to be called monopsony. And you don't want one seller to be the only one, because then that seller can manipulate the price because there's no competition, there's nowhere else for you to go. Lots of the propositions about capitalism, particularly those that celebrate it as an equal system, as an efficient system, as a system that produces a price that really equates how much people want to buy it on the one hand with how much people want to produce and sell it on the other. All those nice, comforting, celebratory statements about capitalism rest on the notion that there are many buyers on one side, many sellers on the other, and competition between them. However, here's the problem. Competition has consequences. When companies compete to sell what they produce to a buyer, they can and will do almost anything to win the competition. They do it out of fear that their competitors are doing that, and out of the hope that if they're the first one to come up with a better way of doing it, with a better product, with a cheaper way of producing it, they can get an advantage over all the others. Long story short, competition, as everyone in every business knows, has always had winners and losers. And what particularly happens is that the winners take advantage of the losers by buying the equipment the losers no longer need at a nice discount, hiring the workers that the losers have to lay off for themselves because they're picking up the market that the losers no longer can sell into. So when there's competition, we notice industry after industry that the many become the few. In the automobile industry, there were once 50 companies in the United States. They ended up being 2 or 3, right? Ford, General Motors, maybe Chrysler. Then the very small number were able to make a fortune of money bringing the foreigners in, the Toyotas, the Volkswagens, the Nissans, and all the rest. Competition is this back and forth, But it is very often the case that we don't have a competitive market. And then the sellers, particularly, are able to manipulate the price. Big corporations in this country dominate their markets. They fight, as they themselves say, for market share, because the bigger the share of the market, the more you can manipulate. They don't just manipulate the supply side, they manipulate the buyers on the demand side. You know how they do that? It's an immense industry called advertising. That's when big corporations hire people to manipulate you in terms of the movies you watch and the TV and the podcasts and the books you read and the magazines you look at to make you buy this brand of soap, not that one. Manipulating the buyer, controlling the supply. The market goes from an engine of efficiency to simply being the plaything of large corporations to get the profits and to get the growth that they want. That's the reality. So when modern celebrators of capitalism, libertarians in the lead, tell you that all capitalism needs is to get rid of government interference, the reaction, the rejoinder is simple. If the government doesn't interfere, competition destroys itself. Competition gets rid of the many buyers and many sellers. So the government is typically called in. We call that the antitrust activities of the government to try to limit, to offset, to reverse what competition does. So the notion that you can have the benefits of competition without government intervention is a fantasy contradicted by the actual history of capitalism from the past to the present. Doing away with government intervention returns us to the competitive capitalism that then destroys itself to bring back in government regulation. We'd be a lot better off to look at the regulation and ask whether it isn't unable to do what we hoped it would do, get us the benefits of regulation, because capitalists have shown themselves perfectly capable of doing what is called capturing the regulating government to make it do what they want, which is why so many of our industries long ago have very little competition. If interventions like this strike you as valuable, something to be added to the national conversation, then please partner with us. Extend the reach of this kind of analysis. Share it, this video, I mean, with your coworkers, your friends, your family. And of course, besides partnering with us in that most important way, if you can help financially defray the costs that go into this, that will be appreciated as well. Thank you.